we investigate mysteries of the unknown. This is SIGH Legends. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to SIGH Legends. My name is Mike L. Flickner, and I'll be your host. Today we're going to talk about haunted or ghost trains. For those of you who may not be familiar with these may be a sort of a residual haunting, but they've always fascinated me because they kind of date back to the Old West days, but not only back then. I mean, they still happen today. And I also want to give a shout out to Matthew Swain, who wrote this book, Haunted Rails. If you get a chance to read it, it's a good read. So anyway, let's sit back, relax, and take a gander on the haunted rails and ghost trains. For over 100 years or such, people have been amazed and interested in the strange phenomenon of ghost trains. Here are a few stories of such legends of these amazing trains and their ghostly existence. Following Abraham Lincoln's 1865 assassination, two coffins, one containing the president's body and the other bearing the exhumed remains of his young son, Willie, who had died in the White House, were placed on a train pulled by a steam locomotive for transport back to the Lincoln's home state of Illinois, where they would be buried. All along the route from Washington to Illinois, people lined the tracks to bid farewell to the president who fought and won the Civil War. The funeral train was made up of 9 cars. The 9th car, which had been built to take the living president and his family on rail trips, was the one in which Lincoln and Willie were carried. The train's route passed through Albany, New York, and for a number of years afterward, around the anniversary of Lincoln's final journey, Albany area railroad men reported seeing a phantom version of the funeral train traveling on the rails. After a time on the evening of each April 27th, people began making their way to the railroad line in hopes of seeing the ghost train as it passed. Some paranormal enthusiasts believe Lincoln's ghost train still rolls through Albany, perhaps even making the entire journey from Washington to Illinois. An additional bit of folklore concerning the train is that it goes by, it stops clocks and watches in the surrounding areas. Ghost trains in general are a paranormal phenomenon experienced in several other places, including in Europe and Canada. In some ways, they are similar to tales of ghost ships on the high seas. Alongside of ghost trains, there have been many reports of haunted train tunnels throughout all of the world. When you think of Indiana, tunnels aren't exactly what come to mind. The terrain here doesn't call for cutting tunnels through mountains, and many Hoosiers drive around the state without ever experiencing a tunnel. However, Indiana does have a decent number of tunnels, including the unique Big Tunnel in Tunnelton. Tunnelton is actually a small community named in honor of several railroad tunnels that cut throughout Indiana. It was established in 1859 and resides within Lawrence County, Indiana. The unique tunnel here, the Big Tunnel of Tunnelton, has some pretty creepy stories surrounding it. The Big Tunnel is allegedly haunted. Stories range from person to person, but almost every tale about this tunnel talks about a man who has been beheaded during the tunnel's construction. This man now haunts the Big Tunnel. and has been seen by many visitors. Most claim that he carries a lantern in one hand and his head in the other. Others' stories abound. On the hill above the tunnel, for instance, sits a former cemetery. Rumors here that when construction workers began cutting into the tunnel, caskets fell through. Other tales of murder and disappearances are whispered about this unique tunnel. One story that locals know or even remember is the murder of Henry Dixon. Allegedly, Dixon was murdered and his body was brought to the tunnel to be destroyed when the next train came through. Locals claim his ghost also haunts the tunnel, seeking justice. It should also be noted that in almost every county of every state across the United States, there is an alleged headless ghost, and alleged haunted railroad tracks, or phantom trains. Is this a real phenomenon? Does it really take place? Or is this something that we need to study further? Just south of San Antonio, Texas, is the site of Texas' most famous ghost story. Not far from the San Juan Mission is an intersection of the roadway that is crossed by railroad tracks. Whether this is an urban legend or truly a ghostly tale has long been forgotten in history. Reportedly, this is the site of a fatal accident in which a train collided with a school bus full of children in the 1930s or 1940s. According to the legend, it was a rainy Texas morning as the train moved swiftly down the tracks when the engineer spied a school bus stalled along his path. Frantically pulling his brake and tugging on the train whistle, the hulking engine quickly advanced toward the bus. Unable to stop in time, 10 children reportedly lost their lives that day and continued to haunt the area, protecting others from a similar fate. As the story goes, if you park your car directly over the tracks and shift into neutral, the ghost of the children will push it uphill out of the way of an oncoming train. And if you have the foresight to cover your bumper with baby powder or flour, you can reportedly see the children's fingerprints upon your car. This story has been featured on the popular television shows of Sightings, Unsolved Mysteries, as well as numerous Texas magazines and newspapers. Despite the much publicized story, its truth has been hotly debated in San Antonio and both area residents, and local law enforcement are wary of the legend. Numerous accounts have been reported that cars do in fact unexpectedly move on their own and mysterious prints are seen on vehicles. Others allege they have heard the voices and laughter of children while at the site. However, in support of the San Antonio residents, there are no records of any such accident having occurred in the newspaper archives anywhere in Texas. It seems to us that an accident of such magnitude would have been reported somewhere. Furthermore, official investigations into the events have determined that despite an illusionary appearance of a level or even slightly inclined road, the street surface is actually a 2-degree declination. This would result in the natural rolling of a car parked in neutral. As for the fingerprints, these could easily be those that were already there, even after washing. Forensic studies have concluded that fingerprints can still occur. As the curious from all over the country come to witness the paranormal phenomenon, law enforcement is constantly forced to deal with traffic problems at the site, especially around Halloween. Area residents have grown extremely wary of the congestion and the drugs and alcohol that seemingly accompany many of the visitors. Unfortunately, a criminal element has also entered upon the scene, as reports of carjackings, purse snatchings, and worse are perpetrated on the many curious and unsuspected ghost hunters. San Antonio is reportedly the most haunted city in the state of Texas, with dozens of ghostly sights that are not debated. Perhaps it is time to give this legend a rest, along with local law enforcement and area residents. Residual hauntings is a very interesting subject, and after all, they are called ghosts. And that's what the definition of a ghost is just a glimpse of the past. A ghost is not intelligent by any means. Intelligent hauntings are called spirits. Ghost is just something that's going to replay itself over and over again in time, whether you're there or not. And it has no idea that you're even there. But could that be what ghost trains are? Or are they something of a time travel? Are we looking into another universe at a different time period? Guess we'll never know for sure. But I also wanted to share with you today another one of SIGH's shorts. Was an investigation that we did of the Bridgewater Cemetery outside of Scott County. So let's take a look at that, shall we? Bridgewater Cemetery is an isolated cemetery that's located just outside of Scottsburg, Indiana. There's been many tales of events that take place at Bridgewater Cemetery, seeing shadow apparitions moving around the cemetery at night, to red eyes glowing, and even a spectral horse. Grave markers at the cemetery apparently can move around by themselves from time to time. Sometimes they'll disappear for weeks on end and then reappear, or randomly move from one side of the cemetery to the other. Could this be the pranks of the local kids just playing tricks on people? Maybe so. I know that on the first visit that SIGH did there, it was Barb Wyatt and Debbie Jansen. On their first visit, the gate was gone. When they came back on the second visit, the gate was back, but several of the grave markers were gone. Local lore claims that there are many Civil War soldiers buried inside of the cemetery, and that there are a few blacks buried at the cemetery, but they are located outside of the gates, where there used to be a hanging tree where hangings used to take place. As of this date, SIGH has not been able to confirm that there has been any hangings taking place at the cemetery. It is also rumored that teenagers go to the cemetery at night and try to perform black magic rituals. There is evidence to support this, as some of the tombstones have been removed, some have been scorched by fire, and there has been some offerings left on the grave sites. Other than a few personal feelings, a grave marker that kept getting thrown into the woods that had to be retrieved each time Barb and Debbie came back, and even a few growls, it should be noted that no EVPs were ever captured at this cemetery. One thing for certain, Bridgewater is a curiosity to many, and it's certainly worth visiting, whether it be haunted or not. Just bring a jacket with you, because it seems to get colder as soon as you walk through the gates. Thanks for watching. The Southern Indiana Ghost Hunters are Mike Flickner, Barb Wyatt, Debbie Jansen, Amber Royalty, and Gabe Wyatt. We'll see you soon. Ridgewater Cemetery was an interesting little cemetery. I enjoyed myself while we were there, checking out the grounds and everything. However, it is kind of sad because there's been quite a bit of grave desecration to the cemetery. And it goes back, it's in a long gravel road you have to go back to get to it, with signs on each side of the road, private property, private property. So it's not so much the dead you have to be afraid of if you go back to visit Ridgewater Cemetery. It's rather the living, because they take it very serious, the no trespassing, and they'll follow you back on four-wheelers, and occasional gunshots in the fields that surround the cemetery. But if you do get a chance to check it out, please do. It's a neat place, and we'll see you next time on SIGH Legends.